$5,000 a month, 9 animals, 1 ordinary shed. No land, no barn, no permits between you and the first sale. And here is why it holds in a downturn. When money gets tight, people stop buying gadgets and vacations, but they never stop buying food, feeding their pets, or feeding their gardens. Every animal here sells exactly that: eggs, meat, honey, feeder insects, fertilizer, the stuff people keep buying when times are hard. Now the insider angle nobody tells you, and it is a legal one. Your buyers, reptile keepers, pet stores, chicken and bird owners, gardeners, farmers market shoppers are unglamorous, and every animal on this list sits in a legal classification that lets a regular person raise and sell it from a backyard shed, no farm license to get started. That classification is the whole game, and I will show you exactly where it cuts for you and where it bites. And there is a payoff I would build this whole shed around: a closed waste loop where one animal's bedding feeds the next animal for free until the shed runs its own inputs. That system turns 9 hobbies into one machine, and I am parking it at the very end, because first you need the animals. One promise before we start: every price I say is a real listing you can pull up right now. A real marketplace, a real bait counter, a real reptile expo, not a made-up number. So let's count down from 9 to the one animal I would start tomorrow in a bad economy. Number 9. Number 9. Red wiggler worms, Icinia fetida. Picture 3 totes on a laundry room shelf, quietly turning kitchen scraps into 2 things people pay cash for even when they are broke: live worms for fishing bait, and worm castings, a premium soil fertilizer gardeners hunt for. That is your money shot. A shelf smaller than a bookcase throwing off 2 income lines. The wall in your head says dirt is not a business, it looks like garbage. And that exact dismissal is why almost nobody sells them, which makes that empty lane your opening. Hard numbers in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 runs $20 to $80 a month because the population has to build before you sell, so this is the patient anchor of the stack, not the sprinter. Feed cost is near 0. Your scraps do the work, so the margin is almost pure. Startup is the cheapest on the list, $60 to $200 for a stacked worm bin plus a starter pound of wet wigglers, roughly 1,000 worms that double every 2 to 3 months in a healthy bin. Time to your first dollar is the trade-off. You wait on that population. Now where you sell, because this is where most videos strand you. 2 buyer pools. Local gardeners, nurseries, and plant groups for the castings, bait shops and anglers for the live worms. The price ladder, floor to premium. Castings run 35 to 50 cents a pound in bulk, $1 to $3 a pound in small retail bags, and live red wigglers sit at the top, $40 to $60 a pound with shipping. Your highest margin channel is the bait counter, about $10 a cup handed across. Cash, no shipping, and when one bait shop fills up, you drive to the next town's shop and the next nursery. The legal fact that is your edge. Icinia is legal nationwide, but the invasive jumping worm, Amanthus, is a prohibited invasive species in Wisconsin and Minnesota, a misdemeanor to possess, sell, or transport under Wisconsin's NR 40 and the Minnesota DNR. So never sell those, and never dump a bin outdoors. The mistake is believing worms double forever so you get rich in a year. The flip? They only double in a healthy bin, and one that cooks in a hot shed or freezes in a cold one stalls, so the operator who controls temperature owns the margin the amateurs give away. Which brings me to the next one. So loud and so smelly, most people quit within a month, while the ones who stick it out own a buyer who comes back every single week. Number 8. House crickets, Acheta domesticus. Picture a stack of bins in the corner, and once a week you scoop cups of live crickets into a box that goes straight to a reptile store that buys again next week. $600 to $900 a month is on the table at real volume because geckos, bearded dragons, frogs, and tarantulas eat these constantly, recession or not. The wall in your head. They are loud, they smell. Good. That is exactly why most people quit, which leaves the standing weekly demand wide open for whoever runs a clean bin. Hard numbers in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $20 to $100 a month because crickets are cheap per unit and beginners lose a lot early to die-offs. So you reach real money only at volume. This is a scale play. Feed cost is low, cheap dry feed plus scraps. Startup is $100 to $250 for bins, egg crate flats, a heat source, and a starter batch plus a laying tub. Time to first dollar is fast. Crickets breed in weeks. Where you sell, 2 pools. Local independent reptile and pet stores that want a reliable weekly supply, and Reptile Keepers Direct through Facebook and expos. The price ladder: live crickets retail around $25 per thousand, pennies each, and a store buys below that wholesale. So your highest margin move is the standing weekly store account. One shop taking a fixed order every week beats 100 one-off online sales. When one store is covered, the next independent reptile shop 2 towns over is your next outlet. The legal fact that is your edge here is biological, not bureaucratic. A cheetah needs no federal permit and is the only cricket approved for commercial distribution in the U.S., so you are on the clear side by default. The risk to plan around is that cricket paralysis virus and Acheta domesticus densovirus wiped out more than 60 million crickets in the 2011 U.S. farm collapse, and no virus-free colonies exist. The mistake is thinking crickets breed by the thousands, so it is free money. The flip? They breed fast, but a single virus can crash a colony in days. So the smart operator runs 2 separated colonies as insurance, and that redundancy makes your supply the reliable one when a competitor's crashes overnight. Now, the next animal eats the garbage you would pay to haul away and turns it into a grub the feed store sells for a price that will genuinely surprise you. Number 7. Black soldier fly larvae, Hermetia illucens. Here is the shot. A single self-harvesting bin where the larvae crawl up a ramp and drop themselves into a cup. No picking, and out comes high-protein larvae that chicken and reptile keepers buy as a treat. Plus, frass, the castings gardeners buy as fertilizer. It is the closest thing to a free input animal here because it eats waste you would otherwise throw away. The wall? It is a fly larva, and your brain says gross, until you see the feed store price on a bag of dried grubs and the gross flips to a grin. Hard numbers, in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $20 to $120 a month, scaling with how much waste you process. Feed cost is the lowest on the list, your own food waste, which is the whole point. Startup is $80 to $250 for a bioconversion bin with a self-harvest ramp, plus a starter culture or an attractant to draw wildflies, and in cold climates, a heat source because they stall below 70 degrees. Time to first dollar is quick in warm weather. Where you sell? 2 pools. Local backyard chicken and reptile keepers for the larvae, and gardeners and plant groups for the bagged frass. The price ladder: Larvae sell direct to keepers as a premium treat, and frass is the quiet earner, $400 to $800 a metric ton wholesale, some markets $200 to $400, with small retail bags running far higher per pound, which is your best margin channel, so bag the frass small and sell it by the pound rather than dumping a ton wholesale. One nursery only takes so many bags, so the local gardening groups in the next town are your next outlet. The legal fact that is your edge, and it is sharp. Black soldier flies are native across most of the U.S., and you need no permit to raise them as feed for your own animals. But the moment you sell insect protein as commercial livestock or pet feed, you trigger AFCO and state feed control labeling rules. And to be legal commercial feed, the larvae must be raised on feed-grade feedstock only, not waste or manure. So the clean, unregulated lane is selling frass to gardeners and larvae as a treat. And knowing that line keeps you selling while others get a letter. The mistake is believing free trash in means big money out, totally passive. The flip? Inputs are free, but collecting waste and harvesting is real work. And selling frass and treats instead of chasing the regulated feed market keeps the free input advantage without the paperwork. Next up is a worm that pays more per pound than anything so far, and the reason nobody floods the market is a slow, patient job most people refuse to do. Number 6. Superworms. Zophobus morio. Picture a shelf of stackable bins holding a meatier, bigger cousin of the mealworm, the exact feeder reptile and exotic bird keepers prize because one superworm feeds far more than one mealworm, and bearded dragon owners buy them through any economy. Your money shot is the bearded dragon crowd checking out cup after cup at a reptile expo. The wall? You think a worm is a worm, why pay more? But it takes longer to pupate, and each one has to be isolated by hand to breed. Real manual work. And that work is precisely the fence that keeps competitors out and your prices up. Hard numbers in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $30 to $120 a month. Feed cost is low, bran plus vegetable scraps. Startup is $100 to $250 for stackable bins, a heat source, bran, and a starter batch of superworms plus beetles. Time to first dollar is longer than crickets. The catch is the breeding cycle. Superworms will not pupate while crowded. So to breed beetles, you isolate hundreds individually in separate canisters, and that slow work is the whole reason supply stays tight. Where you sell, 2 pools. Local reptile and exotic bird keepers direct through Facebook and reptile expos, and independent pet and reptile stores. The price ladder? Superworms sell $15 to $30 a pound retail, higher than mealworms, with live counts around $38 per thousand. So your highest margin channel is selling by the pound direct to keepers at expos rather than wholesaling 1,000 counts to shops. When your expo and Facebook crowd is covered, the reptile shops that hate doing their own breeding are your next outlet. The legal fact for your edge? Zophobus needs no federal permit and is legal nationwide for feeder use, though selling at a market or as packaged feed can trigger state cottage food or feed rules, so keep it to live feeders and you stay clean. The mistake is thinking superworms are just mealworms worth more, an easy upgrade. The flip? They are worth more per pound, and the isolation labor that scares everyone off is exactly what protects your margin. Now the next one is the single lowest effort insect farm on the list. It grows on a shelf while you sleep, and its buyer pool actually swells every time grocery egg prices spike. Number 5. Mealworms. Tenebrio molitor. Here is the shot. A quiet stack of trays that need almost no daily work, and a feed that backyard chicken keepers wild bird feeders, reptile owners, and fishermen all buy in a downturn. The buyer base grows when grocery egg prices spike and people start their own flocks. Your money picture is a shelf that runs itself. The wall? They look like nothing. You dismiss them on sight, and so does everyone else, which is your opening to own a low-effort supply nobody bothers with. Hard numbers in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $30 to $120 a month. Feed cost is low, bran and oat bedding plus a little vegetable. Startup is $80 to $200 for stacking trays, bran and oat bedding, and a starter batch of mealworms. Time to first dollar is moderate, and mealworms are cheap per worm, so like crickets, this is a volume game. The eye-catching $3,000 a month is a serious operation with dozens of trays and automated sifting, not a starter shelf. So treat this as your steady, low-labor baseline. Where you sell? 2 pools, backyard chicken keepers and wild bird feeders through feed stores, and reptile keepers, plus independent pet stores. The price ladder. Live mealworms sell $10 to $20 a pound. Dried mealworms for chicken and bird feed run $12 to $25 a pound in retail bags. Bulk drops to around $6 a pound. So your highest margin channel is small retail bags of live feeders sold locally, where you skip the labeling headaches and keep the markup. One feed store only moves so many bags, so the next feed store and the next backyard chicken group are your next outlets. The legal fact for your edge. Tenebrio needs no permit and is legal nationwide, but selling packaged feed at a market falls under state cottage food and feed labeling rules, and dried mealworms for human consumption is a separate regulated category. So sell live feeders locally and you stay clear. Now pause and stack what we have, because we are halfway. Red wigglers, crickets, black soldier flies, superworms, and mealworms together already run a real few $100s a month once they are humming. And that is only the incept floor. We have not touched the big earners yet. The roaches, the honey, the meat, and the bird. I would start tomorrow, each one climbing from here. The mistake is thinking mealworms breed themselves on a shelf, so $3,000 a month is easy. The flip, they do breed with almost no labor, and that near-zero effort is exactly why they are the perfect base layer, running alongside 3 other lines with barely any extra work. Now, the next animal is the feeder reptile keepers are chronically short of everywhere it is legal. And there is one very specific place it is flat-out banned that could cost you your whole colony. Number 4. Dubia roaches. Blaptica dubia. Picture a warm bin quietly producing the feeder reptile keepers and pet stores run short of constantly, because dubia are quiet, do not smell like crickets, cannot climb smooth walls, and are more nutritious. Demand outruns supply almost everywhere they are legal, so your money shot is a waiting list of stores that keep running out. The wall. They are slow to reproduce at first, and you are picturing months of nothing. But that slow start is the exact moat that keeps competitors out and hands the standing demand to whoever is patient enough to wait it out. Hard numbers in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $30 to $150 a month. Feed cost is low, dry feed plus produce. Startup is $100 to $250 for large bins, egg crate flats, a reliable heat source because dubia need it warm to breed, and a breeder starter colony. Time to first dollar is the catch. 4 to 6 months before a colony produces enough surplus to sell steadily. And that ramp is exactly why supply stays short. Where you sell? 2 pools. Local reptile keepers and breeders direct through Facebook and expos, and reptile and pet stores that chronically run out. The price ladder. Dubia are worth far more per unit than crickets. Mediums sell around $8 a cup, and 1,000 count runs about $130 retail. So your highest margin channel is selling cups direct to keepers rather than bulk wholesaling. And the store accounts that keep running dry are your recurring next outlets. Now, the legal fact that is the sharpest edge on the list. Dubia are flatly illegal in Florida and Hawaii, a prohibited species you cannot import, breed, or sell without a permit not issued to feeder sellers because of the escape risk. But here is the insider move. The legal alternative everywhere is the discoid roach, Blaberus discoidalis, legal in all 50 states with near identical nutrition. So in Florida or Hawaii, you raise discoids and serve the same hungry market. And knowing that swap is the difference between a business and a citation. The mistake is thinking dubia are in shortage, so you sell out instantly for $4,000 a month. The flip, demand is genuinely strong, and the 4 to 6 month ramp that scares people off is the very reason the shortage never closes. So patience inherits a market that keeps its own competition out. Now the next one is where the hype lies hardest, and I am going to correct it out loud before I quote a single number, because the animal is worth it once you see it honestly. Number 3. Honeybees. One hive in a corner of the yard, or beside the shed, producing the most recession-proof product imaginable, raw local honey, which people treat as food, medicine, and a small luxury they refuse to give up. Add beeswax and nucleus colonies sold to new beekeepers each spring, and one hive becomes several income lines. Your money shot is a farmer's market table of glowing jars that sell out by noon. And I want to break one wall cleanly. This is the one where the numbers get twisted the most online. So I am handing you the honest version, because the honest version is what keeps you in the game. Hard numbers, in order, and this is the biggest honesty correction on the list, treated as planning data so you build it right. Gross. First, with bees, the money runs per year, not per month. An established hive yields 30 to 60 pounds of honey a year, and honey sells for about $6 a pound wholesale or $12 to $25 a jar at a farmer's market. So one honest hive makes roughly $200 to $500 a year from honey, about $15 to $40 a month equivalent, plus a little wax and the occasional nuck at $150 to $250 in spring. Feed cost is mostly the bees feeding themselves once established. Startup is not the $500 you always hear. A single proper hive with bees, woodenware, a suit, a smoker, and tools runs $400 to $800, and a sensible 2-hive apiary in 2026 averages around $1,200 all in. Time to first dollar is the real catch. Year 1 yields about 0 because the bees spend that whole first season drawing comb, which makes bees the long horizon line in the stack, the one you plant and let mature. Where you sell, 2 pools, farmers market and roadside customers plus local stores for honey and wax, and new beekeepers and bee clubs buying nucs each spring. The price ladder is the honey math. Floor at $6 a pound wholesale, premium at $12 to $25 a jar retail, so your highest margin channel is the jar at the market, never the wholesale pound. And when your booth is maxed, roadside stands and local stores are your next outlets. The legal fact for your edge, most states require you to register your hives with the state apiary inspector. Florida makes it mandatory under Statute Chapter 586. California goes through the County Ag Commissioner. New York requires free annual registration, and many cities and HOAs cap hive numbers. Plus, selling the honey falls under state cottage food labeling rules. The mistake is believing one hive, $500 to start, $3,000 a year easy. The flip, the income is per year, and a single honest hive makes 200 to 500 a year. So the real play is stacking several hives and selling nooks over a few seasons. The beekeeper who plants early and compounds hives owns a rising line, while everyone chasing the quick number quits. Now the next animal is the protein people quietly turn back to when grocery meat gets expensive. And the reason almost nobody supplies it is one squeamish job that becomes your margin. Number 2. Meat rabbits. Breeds like New Zealand's and Californians, raised in stacked cages in a shed. Picture a wall of wire cages in a footprint smaller than a chest freezer. Each doe putting out dozens of pounds of lean, high-protein meat a year on pellets and hay, plus breeding stock other homesteaders line up to buy. That is your money shot, a freezer-sized corner feeding families when grocery meat climbs. The wall. Processing your own meat is work most people flinch from, and you are flinching right now. But that flinch is exactly the barrier that keeps the field empty and the margin yours. Hard numbers, in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $50 to $200 a month, one of the stronger monthly lines here. Feed cost is about 70% of your total cost, pellets and hay, and yes, it climbs in a recession alongside everyone else's, so feed control is your lever. Startup is $200 to $500 for stacked wire cages, feeders, waterers, nest boxes, and a starting trio of 1 buck and 2 does. Time to first dollar is a couple of months to the first litter grown out. Where you sell? 2 pools. Local families and farmers market customers wanting clean meat, and homesteaders and 4-H families buying your breeding stock. The price ladder. Rabbit meat retails $6 to $12 a pound as carcass, and live breeding stock sells $30 to $75 a head locally. So your highest margin channel is live breeding stock, which sells far more freely than packaged meat and skips the processing gate entirely. And when your local homesteading and 4-H circle is covered, the next county's farmers market and homestead groups are your next outlets. Now the legal fact that has real teeth, and it is your edge once you know it. Rabbit is exempt from mandatory federal USDA inspection, voluntary only under 9 CFR 354. But state rules vary sharply, and many states require slaughter and processing at a state-licensed facility before you can sell meat to the public, while many cities and HOAs limit or ban rabbits as livestock. Because you can sell live breeding stock far more freely than packaged meat, lead with stock and treat meat as the secondary line, sidestepping the processing rule instead of tripping over it. The mistake is thinking rabbits breed like rabbits, so it is endless free meat money. The flip? Feed is most of your cost, and processing meat is legally gated. So the steadier money leans on breeding stock, and selling stock to the next generation of rabbit raisers builds a line that compounds while the meat-only crowd fights the licensing. Now the number 1 animal, from egg to laying bird in about 8 weeks, stacks 3 separate income streams at once and eats a fraction of what a chicken does. It is the one I would start tomorrow. Number 1. Coturnix Quail. The fast-cycling bird that goes from egg to laying in about 8 weeks and hands you 3 recession-proof streams at once: table eggs, meat, and hatching eggs. Picture a few dozen birds in a stack of cages taking up less room than a bookshelf, out-earning a whole chicken flock in a fraction of the space. When grocery egg prices spiked, quail egg demand spiked right with them, and a quail eats a fraction of what a chicken does. Your money shot is 3 income lines running off 1 small rack of cages. This is the one I would start tomorrow, and the wall in your head, that birds must need land or permits or a rooster's worth of noise is exactly the myth that leaves this lane open. Here is the real math, the strongest of the 9, in order. Gross for a solo beginner in year 1 is $50 to $250 a month, climbing as the flock and customer base grow. The top monthly earner on the list. Feed cost is high-protein game bird feed, which climbs in a downturn like all grain does, but a hatch every couple of months rebuilds your flock for free, which is why quail pay back faster than almost any animal here. Startup for 50 to 100 birds is $300 to $700 for stacked cages, a small incubator so you hatch your own replacements, feeders, waterers, and started birds. Time to first dollar is the fastest real payback on the list, about 8 weeks from egg to laying bird. Where you sell: 2 pools. Local farmers market and direct egg customers, including specialty markets that prize quail eggs, and backyard keepers buying your hatching eggs through Facebook. The price ladder. Table quail eggs sell $3 to $6 a dozen. Hatching eggs jump to $8 to $20+ a dozen, and dressed meat birds run $3 to $5 each, so your highest margin channel is hatching eggs sold to other keepers. The same eggs at triple the table price. And when one market and one Facebook group are maxed, the next market and the specialty grocers that prize quail eggs are your next outlets, multiplying every time egg prices climb. Now the legal fact that cuts both ways and is your edge once you know it. Coturnix are often exempt from rooster and poultry zoning, and many states need no permit to keep them personally. But a game bird breeder permit is commonly required once you breed, sell, exhibit, or go past about 100 birds. And selling birds, eggs, or chicks across state lines requires NPIP certification, meaning pilorum typhoid and avian influenza testing. This is not a blanket federal free pass, and getting NPIP certified early lets you ship across state lines while local competitors are stuck in their own zip code. The mistake is thinking quail print money in 8 weeks, legal everywhere, passive eggs forever. The flip? They cycle fast and stack 3 streams, and once you clear the permit and NPI step, that classification becomes a wall around your business. Casual sellers never climb. The fastest, most defensible line in the whole shed. So, how do all 9 stack into one roughly $5,000 shed? They share their inputs and their buyers, and this is the waste loop system I parked at the top. Quail and rabbits anchor the food side, and their bedding and waste feed the worm and black soldier fly bins for free, closing the loop I promised you. Those bins, plus mealworms, superworms, crickets, and dubia, produce feeder insects you sell to the same reptile and chicken keepers, while the leftover frass and castings go straight to gardeners. So one animal's trash becomes the next animal's feed and the next customer's fertilizer. Build in this order, lowest barrier first. Start with quail for the fastest cash flow, add mealworms and dubia as your feeder base, layer in red wigglers and black soldier flies to recycle waste at near zero cost, then add meat rabbits, and finally honeybees as the slower, higher ticket lines, remembering the bees pay per year, not per month. And here is the one honest line about that 5,000 headline, said once, plainly. That number is the stacked aggregate of all 9 streams running together after months, often a full year, of building, not what one bin of worms pays you next payday. And that is precisely why it holds, because a stack this deep is nearly impossible for a recession to knock over all at once. A free starter guide in the description lays out this exact build order and the legal points for each animal. That is the countdown, ascending value and demand, ending on the Coturnix Quail I would start tomorrow. So here is your one concrete first move. Start with quail this week. $300 to $700 gets you 50 birds, a small incubator, and cages. And you are 8 weeks from your first laying hens and your first dozen eggs sold at the market. Then let the loop build itself. Quail bedding into the worm and black soldier fly bins, insects back to the reptile and chicken keepers, frass and castings to the gardeners until the shed is feeding itself. Every price I gave you is a real listing you can open right now. A farmer's market booth, a reptile expo cup, a bait counter. So the fastest way to prove this to yourself is to go check one buyer near you today. And I genuinely want to build the exact path for your setup. So tell me in the comments what space you are working with. A single shelf, a closet, a spare room, a corner of the yard, a whole shed. And I will map the smartest first 3 animals for that footprint, because the person raising these in a real shed is who I am building this for. Drop your space below and I will meet you there.